Rowland worked in a lonely repair outpost that sat on the edge of a quiet asteroid field, far away from the busy trade routes where most humans traveled. Every morning, he stepped out of the small metal doorway and looked at the same endless stretch of drifting rocks, floating dust, and silent darkness. To others, the place might have looked empty or even depressing, but to him, it was peaceful. He liked machines more than conversations. Machines made sense to him. People usually did not. If something was broken, he fixed it. If something buzzed, rattled, or refused to start, his hands could solve it long before his voice could explain it. He lived alone, but not because he disliked others. He simply enjoyed quiet work. Over the years, he built a life that did not require crowds, noise, or complicated relationships. His days were predictable. He made tea from an old metal flask, wore the same thick gloves, and walked the same path to inspect the tools he had set out the night before. Anyone watching him would think he lived the simplest life a man could choose. Yet his skills were far from simple. He understood machines the way some people understood music. He felt their rhythm and heard their problems before they failed. The outpost itself was small, with only 2 main rooms. One room held his tools, the other held the generator and a sleeping pad he had repaired a dozen times. Outside sat a landing platform where the rare traveler came asking for repairs. Most travelers only passed by when they had no other choice. The far belt was not a place for sightseeing. It was a place for those who got lost, those who ran from something, or those who were just unlucky. Still, Rowland was never rude. He fixed every ship that came his way, no matter who owned it, no matter what trouble followed it, and no matter how late he had to stay awake. He charged little and asked no questions. This made him useful, but it also made him noticeable. Somewhere far away, deep within a region of the galaxy that humans rarely entered, an alien matriarch had begun watching his movements. She watched through reports gathered by her scouts, who believed Rowland had taken something important from her clan. In truth, Rowland had no idea she even existed. He had no idea anyone was watching him at all. The matriarch came from a culture that valued strength and reacted quickly to suspicion. If someone threatened her people, she eliminated them without waiting for explanations. When her scouts told her about a human mechanic who kept old alien technology in his workshop, she assumed the worst. Her clan had recently lost a device that carried memories from their ancestors. A device small enough to be carried off by someone who understood machinery. A device she treasured more than any weapon. She convinced herself the human must have stolen it. She never considered the possibility he had simply found damaged scraps left behind by passing travelers. To her, a threat was a threat. The machine fragments in Rowland's workshop came from old cargo that traders had thrown away long before they reached his outpost. He kept them because he liked understanding unfamiliar engines and strange designs. To him, it was a hobby. To her, it looked like theft. Her anger grew quickly. She did not send a message. She did not ask questions. She decided she needed to remove him before he used the device against her people. Even though he had never once harmed anyone in his life, Rowland worked peacefully while her anger built millions of miles away. On that day, he was repairing a damaged panel from an old shuttle. He hummed as he worked, tightening a set of bolts and wiping grease from his fingers. He spoke aloud sometimes, not because anyone listened, but because it made the silence feel warm instead of empty. He talked to the machines the way some people talk to pets. If anyone had told him an alien leader believed he was a thief, he would have laughed in disbelief. He barely remembered to keep spare filters for his own generator. He had no skill in stealing anything from anyone. While he cleaned a wrench, he received a faint alert from the long-range scanner. Usually the alarm told him when a ship or debris entered his area. This time it showed something strange, something organic, something moving through space with steady rhythm. He stared at the screen with confusion. Space was not a place for animals. Nothing alive traveled that far without a ship. He checked the reading again, thinking it was an error. The scanner insisted it was correct. Something alive was coming toward him, but Rowland was not the kind of man who panicked. He waited, eyes calm, hands steady, mind clear. He assumed maybe it was a misreading from a passing mineral cloud. The scanner sometimes picked up odd signals when the belt shifted. Hours passed quietly, while the scanner's signal grew stronger. Whatever approached moved with intention, not drifting like space debris, but gliding straight toward him. Still, Rowland continued working. He did not run for a weapon. He did not hide. He fixed machines, and that was the only thing he knew how to do when he felt uncertain. The matriarch's hunter big cat, bred for silent travel and deadly missions, cut through space with incredible grace. Its body was large, sleek, and covered in fur, tougher than any human armor. Its muscles adapted to low gravity, and its lungs filtered cosmic particles as if they were air. It had been trained to find targets, eliminate them quickly, and return without hesitation. It had never failed a mission. It had never paused to question an order. It trusted its instincts and obeyed its master. Rowland knew none of this. He only knew something alive was heading his way. When the creature finally reached the outer area near the outpost, the ground trembled softly. Rowland looked up from a panel he was welding and felt the vibration through the floor. He stepped to the doorway and looked across the platform, expecting maybe a damaged ship making a rough landing. Instead, he saw something he had never imagined. A large figure moved in the dusty light of the asteroid belt. Its shape looked like a massive wild cat he had once seen in old holobooks, but far larger, with glowing lines across its limbs and deep intelligence in its eyes. It stood quiet, studying him from a distance. Rowland stared back with a stunned expression, not believing what he saw. The creature expected fear. It had been trained to sense fear in others, to read body language, to know when a target realized the danger. But Rowland did not move back. He did not grab anything to defend himself. His eyes were wide, yes, but not in terror. They held more wonder than fear, as if he found it incredible that such a creature existed at all. The creature lowered itself slowly, preparing to leap. Rowland sensed something was wrong in its movement. Not wrong in a dangerous way, but wrong in a wounded way. He noticed a small shake in its leg, a slight hesitation in its stance. It was subtle, too subtle for most people to catch, but Rowland had spent years watching machines for minor flaws. He knew when something was damaged, whether metal or flesh. Instead of stepping back, he stepped forward. His voice came out soft, steady, and strangely gentle. He told the creature he did not want trouble. He told it he could help if it would let him. He did not know if it understood anything he said, but he hoped tone mattered more than words. The creature pressed its weight on its injured limb again and made a low sound, a sound that told him it was in pain. Rowland slowly removed his gloves and held his hands out, showing he had no weapon. The creature watched every movement, its eyes bright, its body tense. It had been sent to kill, yet something about the human in front of it did not match any past experience. No enemy had ever stepped closer when facing it. No target had ever spoken with calm voice. The creature's training told it to attack. Something deeper inside told it to wait. Step by careful step, Rowland moved closer until he reached the edge of the platform. The creature could have ended him in a single motion, yet it stayed still, confused by the strange gentleness. Rowland knelt and touched the ground before reaching out just enough to examine the injured part. When his fingers brushed against warm fur, the creature did not pull away. It let him look, let him understand the injury, let him help. Rowland whispered that it would be all right. He did not know if he could keep that promise, but he meant every word. In that moment, he felt no fear, only concern for a living being that had somehow reached his lonely outpost. He did not know he had just changed the creature's entire purpose. He did not know the matriarch would never expect what was happening. He only knew someone, or something, needed help, and he had always been someone who helped when he could. The creature did not attack. Instead, it studied him. Its eyes, sharp and bright, followed every movement Rowland made as he worked quietly to clean the small cut in its leg. He did not panic, and he did not rush. Every movement was slow and deliberate. Every action spoke of care. He knew that animals, even the most dangerous ones, reacted not only to threats, but to intentions. And his intention was clear. He wanted to help, not hurt. The big cat's body tensed as he applied a makeshift bandage to the wound. It shifted slightly, but allowed him to touch it. Its ears twitched, its tail flicked, but the usual hunter instincts were confused by the human's calm demeanor. Rowland worked carefully, humming softly. He talked to the creature as if it could understand him, even though he did not expect it to. Somehow, the words felt necessary, to show that he meant no harm. "You're hurt, I know," he said. "It'll be all right. Just hold still for me." He checked the limb, noting that it was injured from the force of a jump through space. The muscles had overstretched, and the joint was bruised. Any creature would be in pain, but this one was more than an animal. It was bred for space hunting, for speed, for killing targets far beyond what any human could survive. Yet here it was, vulnerable, and he was the first being to show it care instead of fear. For a long while, the two just stayed in the silence of the asteroid belt, one kneeling, one observing. Dust drifted in the low gravity around them, and tiny lights from distant stars flickered like fireflies. Rowland took a step back and examined the creature's size and strength. He could barely imagine how someone had trained it to obey and attack. It had been born for killing, for precision, for following orders without question. Yet something about the calm, human presence in front of it made it pause. For the first time in its life, it hesitated, unsure what to do next. The human mechanic had no weapons. He had no fleet, no soldiers, no plans for escape. He had nothing but his hands, his knowledge, and his steady calm. He cleaned the wound with water from a small container he carried, using old tools to fashion a simple brace around the leg. The big cat watched every move, its glowing eyes reflecting the faint light from the nearby asteroids. Each time Rowland spoke, it tilted its head, listening, as though trying to understand the strange gestures of this species that did not flee from it. Hours passed like minutes. The bond, though silent and fragile, was forming. Rowland found himself speaking about small things, the engines he had fixed that day, the slow repairs on an old shuttle, the quiet loneliness of the asteroid belt. He spoke in a soft tone, with pauses, letting the creature absorb the sounds without fear. He did not know why, but it felt necessary to tell it about his life. Maybe it was instinct, maybe habit, but he wanted the creature to know he was not an enemy. The big cat shifted, closer now, allowing him to brush the fur along its injured leg. Its body radiated strength even in vulnerability, and Rowland could feel the power beneath the calm surface. He realized that this was not just any creature. It had been trained for years, designed to survive and strike in the harshest conditions. If it wanted, it could destroy him in a heartbeat. Yet, it did not. And in that hesitation, he saw a chance, not just to survive, but to turn a deadly enemy into something different. Rowland finished applying the bandage and stepped back. He raised his hands, showing he had no tools, no threat, only intent to help. The creature looked at him, then at its own leg, then back at him. Its head moved slowly, almost as if it was measuring trust. Slowly, very slowly, it allowed him to approach again. this time letting him check the bandage. The human worked with care, adjusting it just enough to relieve pressure, making sure the creature would not be in pain when it moved again. Dot as the sun of a distant star reflected on the metal surface of his outpost. Rowland began to notice more about the creature. Its breathing was deep and controlled, even though it had been sent to kill. Its muscles were taut, yet not rigid, ready to strike, yet somehow held back. He could see scars along its body, signs of battles and survival. This creature had lived longer than most hunters, stronger than most warriors, and yet here it was, dependent on him for a small act of care. Rowland spoke softly again, this time about his own past. He talked about how he had chosen this life, far from the chaos of crowded colonies, how he had always loved fixing things, whether machines or devices no one else could understand. He admitted, quietly, that he often felt lonely but never bored. He had no enemies, no plans to fight, no desire for conflict. His voice was calm, honest, and unhurried. He had a way of speaking that carried a weight of truth even when the listener could not understand the words. The creature, for its part, began to lower its body closer to the ground, a sign of cautious acceptance. Its tail stopped flicking in sharp, sudden movements and instead swayed slowly. Its ears, once angled sharply forward, now moved with relaxed attention. Rowland felt a small thrill, not fear, not pride, but a sense of wonder that the creature could feel something different than what it had been trained to feel. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was respect. Or maybe, somehow, it recognized that he was unlike any target it had ever known. Rowland decided to feed it. He reached into his small storage and pulled out rations he had carried for months, placing them carefully on a flat surface nearby. The creature sniffed first, then ate slowly, still cautious. Rowland did not rush it. He understood instinct. He had studied machines long enough to know that speed was not always necessary. Precision and patience mattered more. And in this, he treated the living being as he would a delicate engine. Dot as the creature ate, Rowland began to think. He wondered what it must have felt like to be sent through space with a single purpose, to kill. He imagined the loyalty it had for its master, the precision in its movements, the silent focus it carried for years without pause. And now, here it was, facing a human who showed nothing but calm attention. Something in the creature's instincts shifted. It could sense that he had no tricks, no hidden motives, no threat. It could sense that he had only helped. And in that sense, it hesitated, unsure what obedience truly meant. Night fell over the asteroid field, though night in space was only the faint shift of light from distant stars. Rowland lit a small lamp inside the outpost and continued working on minor repairs, still conscious of the creature outside. Occasionally, it would rise, stretch, and pace slowly, always within view, but never too close. Rowland realized the creature was curious, measuring the human's reactions, observing behavior it had never encountered in its life. He spoke again, softly, about nothing important. About stars, about dust in space, about the strange feeling of fixing things that others might discard. He shared his simple thoughts as if telling a friend, and the creature listened. It did not understand the words, but it understood intent. It understood that this human was no threat. Slowly, slowly, the bond grew. What had started as fear, tension, and the instinct to kill began to shift toward cautious, understanding. Dot by the time the first light of a nearby sun peeked over the rocks. Rowland realized the creature was no longer preparing to strike. It was still tense, yes, still watchful, but it no longer moved with lethal intent. Instead, it stayed near, observing him, alive with attention, and strangely, almost protective. For the first time in its life, the hunter had paused not out of injury, but out of choice. It was thinking beyond instinct. Rowland understood the significance. He did not need to say anything. The quiet, careful attention, the patience, the calm voice, and the hands willing to help had achieved what weapons or machines never could. He had not fought. He had not demanded. He had simply shown care. And in the vast emptiness of space, with a predator built to kill, he had made the first step toward friendship. For Rowland, the day ended as it always did, alone, yet not lonely. Only now he shared the silence with a living creature that had come with the purpose to destroy him. The creature slept nearby, curled in a defensive circle, still wary, but relaxed enough to rest. He could hear its soft breathing, its chest rising and falling, and in that rhythm, he felt something rare in his life, a connection. Not with humans, not with machines, but with life itself. Little did he know, this moment of quiet understanding was only the beginning. The hunter's mind, trained for obedience and precision, had just learned the first lesson of trust, guided by a human who fixed things, healed wounds, and spoke in honesty. And somewhere far away, the alien matriarch was growing impatient, unaware that her weapon was no longer a tool of destruction, but the start of something entirely unexpected. Rowland did not know what would come next. He only knew that he had survived the day, that he had healed a powerful creature, and that somehow he had changed its path. In the quiet outpost, with stars spinning silently overhead, a bond had been formed, a bond that would soon carry him far beyond the asteroid belt, into places no human had ever imagined, riding on the back of a hunter born to kill, yet now learning what it meant to choose. And as the first rays of distant light bathed the outpost in soft glow, Rowland smiled quietly to himself. Today, nothing had exploded. Nothing had failed. He had only helped, and somehow, that had saved him. The next morning, Rowland woke before the sun reached the distant asteroid belt. The big cat, which had spent the night curled near the edge of the outpost platform, was already awake, sitting tall and alert, its glowing eyes scanning the stars. Rowland watched it quietly, marveling at the power in its muscles, the intelligence in its gaze, and the way it seemed to understand him without words. He had never imagined he would find himself in this situation, standing so close to a creature that had been sent to kill him, and realizing it now hesitated, uncertain what to do. He went about his morning routine carefully, not wanting to startle the creature. He brewed tea from the metal flask he carried for years, checking the generator and his tools while keeping an eye on the hunter. It stayed still, observing, yet it no longer made the low, threatening growls he had first heard the day before. It moved with a grace that seemed almost unreal, its body large and powerful, yet precise in every step. Rowland realized that every movement of the creature was measured, not reckless. It was built for space hunting, yes, but it had intelligence, far beyond what he had imagined. Rowland spoke softly, as if explaining to a friend. "You're hungry," he said. "I'll get something for you." He moved toward his storage, pulling out the rations he had saved, placing them carefully on the flat platform. The creature approached slowly, sniffing before taking the food. Its head tilted, and its eyes flicked toward him, almost as if checking for traps. Rowland simply nodded and stepped back. Trust, he realized, could not be rushed. He decided to study it further. He had always been curious about machines, and this creature was the most complex living being he had ever encountered. Its muscles, its breathing, even the way its eyes adjusted to the light, they all fascinated him. He examined the wound again, gently pressing the makeshift bandage to ensure it stayed in place. The creature allowed it without protest, even lying down briefly so he could adjust the brace. Rowland noticed the way it reacted to touch, the subtle flick of its ears, the shift in its tail. Every small movement told him something about its mood and level of comfort. By mid-morning, the creature had begun to move more freely. It circled the outpost, pausing at times to look at him, testing boundaries. Rowland followed its pace calmly, never chasing, never pushing. He spoke to it, describing the repairs he planned for the day, the shuttle engines he wanted to inspect, and the quiet beauty of the asteroid belt. It did not understand words, but it understood tone. His calm, steady voice reassured it, even if instinct urged it to remain wary. He realized something important. The creature's obedience was not absolute. It had been trained for killing, yes, but training alone could not erase curiosity, nor could it suppress instinct entirely. For the first time in its life, it was making choices, hesitating, and observing. It was learning in its own way about something different from hunting or obeying. Rowland understood that this bond would not form overnight. It would take time, patience, and respect. But the first steps had been taken. Rowland decided to show the creature more than words. He led it to a section of his outpost where he kept old engine parts, fragments of ships abandoned or destroyed years ago. He began working on a small, broken device, talking aloud as he did. "This one's tricky," he said. "It's not much, but it's still important." The creature watched closely, its head tilting as he adjusted tiny components, tightened bolts, and tested circuits. It seemed fascinated, leaning closer, sniffing at the faint hum of the powered parts. For hours, Rowland worked while the creature observed. He noticed small signs of recognition, the way it shifted when a part clicked into place, the way its ears twitched in curiosity, the way it lowered its body slightly when a piece moved too fast. It was learning, reacting, and understanding, even without fully knowing why. Rowland smiled quietly to himself. He realized that the hunter, sent to destroy him, was now witnessing his life in a way no one else had. And in that observation, a silent trust began to grow as the day passed. Rowland moved outside the outpost to check the landing platform. The big cat followed, keeping a careful distance, but never leaving his side. He examined the surface, testing for cracks or weaknesses, talking softly about the repairs he would make to support ships that might land in the future. The creature observed every movement, its tail swaying slowly, its body relaxed enough to move but tense enough to remain aware. It was no longer a simple weapon. It was becoming something else, guided by the human who had chosen understanding over fear. During a break, Rowland sat on a metal crate, sipping tea, and looked at the stars. "You've been sent to do a job," he said quietly. "But sometimes, maybe the job isn't what matters. Sometimes what matters is what we choose to do next." The creature tilted its head, listening, as if absorbing the idea. It did not speak, of course, but its eyes held a spark of comprehension that Rowland could not explain. He did not need words. In space, in silence, sometimes action spoke louder than anything else. Rowland decided to test the creature further. He walked slowly toward a nearby ridge, a small slope covered in dust and loose rocks. He had noticed that it could leap with incredible precision, but he wanted to see if it could understand limits, boundaries, and trust. He held out a hand, palm open. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "Come closer if you want, or stay back if you need." The creature paused, eyes flicking between him and the ridge. Its body tensed, then relaxed slightly. Step by step, it approached, keeping its gaze on him, but moving with a careful curiosity. The bond strengthened as Rowland shared small routines. He showed it how to drink from his water container safely, how to navigate the outpost without breaking anything, and even small games he had invented to test its intelligence. The hunter big cat responded in ways that surprised him. It learned quickly, adapted, and even tried to mimic some of his gestures. It was not just following commands, it was thinking, experimenting, and observing. It had never had the chance to make choices like this before by late afternoon. Rowland noticed a shift in the creature's behavior. It no longer followed him only at a distance. It moved with him, mirrored his steps, and occasionally nudged him gently with its head as if checking for reassurance. It had begun to recognize him as more than a target, more than a stranger. It was beginning to see him as a partner, someone safe, someone who understood him, someone who did not want to harm it. Rowland realized that the moment of survival had turned into a moment of connection. He thought about the alien matriarch who had sent this hunter to kill him. She would be furious to know her weapon was no longer obedient, that it was learning from a human instead of following orders. But for now, it did not matter. What mattered was that he had survived, and that he had earned the first spark of trust from a creature. No one else could tame Dot as night fell again. Rowland built a small shelter for the creature near the outpost, using spare metal and old parts to create a space where it could rest comfortably. The hunter accepted it cautiously, lying down inside and stretching its limbs in relief. Rowland watched, understanding that this simple act of care meant far more than any weapon or fleet ever could. It was not about strength, speed, or orders. It was about connection, patience, and understanding. He thought quietly about what might come next. The creature was powerful, and the bond they were forming could lead to something incredible. Perhaps he realized this was more than survival. This was the beginning of a partnership that could change everything. The creature had the ability to travel where no human could, to survive in ways he could never imagine. And he, with his knowledge, calmness, and patience, had the ability to guide it, teach it, and in return, learn from it. Rowland understood one truth clearly. Force and fear could achieve obedience for a moment, but understanding and care could create loyalty that lasted a lifetime. And in the silence of the asteroid belt, with the hunter by his side, he realized that he had just taken the first step towards something far greater than himself, bond that could carry him beyond this lonely outpost, beyond the stars he had always admired, into a future that neither he nor the creature could yet imagine. Dot, as he lay down that night, listening to the gentle breathing of the hunter, Rowland felt a quiet hope he had never known before. He did not know what the alien matriarch would do next, or how far this bond could carry them. But he knew one thing for certain. He had survived not by fighting, not by hiding, but by choosing patience, care, and understanding. And in return, he had gained the first loyal companion he had ever known in the vast emptiness of space. The hunter shifted slightly, nudging Rowland gently, as if testing the boundaries of trust, and he smiled. This was only the beginning. The real adventure, he knew, was just about to start. The following days passed slowly, yet every moment carried a sense of quiet change. Rowland and the hunter big cat had begun to understand one another in ways that neither had anticipated. The creature no longer moved merely out of instinct or orders. It was watching him, learning from him, and in small ways making choices. Each movement it made reflected consideration rather than reaction. Rowland noticed this as he worked on the small engine fragments scattered across his outpost. He would hum quietly while adjusting parts, and the big cat would pace alongside him, its eyes tracking every motion, its tail swaying calmly rather than lashing in irritation or tension. He realized that trust, once earned, was powerful. The creature's hesitation had evolved into cautious engagement. When Rowland reached for a tool, it would step aside without being prompted. When he inspected a small piece of machinery, the creature would lie down nearby, observing without attempting to disrupt. There was a rhythm forming between them, a rhythm of understanding, of patience, of unspoken communication. Rowland found himself speaking aloud more and more, explaining each step of his work, even if the creature could not comprehend words. He hoped tone and intention could communicate as much as language ever could. One afternoon, he decided to test its reaction to an unfamiliar task. He led the hunter to a small assembly he had been working on, a propulsion unit salvage from an old exploration vessel. The piece was delicate, and he spoke softly while guiding its parts, showing the creature how fragile some things could be. The hunter tilted its head, watching with intensity, seemingly aware that any sudden movement could damage the assembly. Rowland smiled quietly. It was more attentive than any apprentice he had ever worked with. Its body had the power to crush, but its mind, now engaged, held a level of focus that surprised him. Rowland began experimenting with small exercises. He would drop a pebble or a small tool near the creature and observe its reaction. At first, it would react instinctively, pouncing or moving aggressively. But with time, it started to pause, assessing before acting. It learned to wait, to observe, and to respond carefully. Rowland understood then that he was doing more than repairing a wound. He was shaping perception, teaching restraint, and showing that strength alone was not the measure of power. The hunter was beginning to understand that there was more to life than hunting, that obedience did not always define purpose. During these quiet hours, Rowland often spoke about space, about the journeys he had dreamed of but never taken, and about the loneliness of life in the far belt. He explained how machines sometimes reminded him of life itself, complex, unpredictable, yet capable of change if treated with respect. The creature would sit nearby, its glowing eyes attentive, its body relaxed, yet ready to move if needed. There was no fear now, no tension, only observation and a sense of curiosity that grew day by day. The bond deepened when Rowland noticed something extraordinary. The hunter began to mirror his movements in subtle ways, almost instinctively. If he stepped back, it adjusted its position. If he knelt to inspect a panel, it lowered itself slightly, keeping pace without moving closer than necessary. Rowland realized that this was more than survival. It was learning from him, adapting to his behavior, and beginning to trust his guidance. He spoke softly to it, encouraging this behavior, praising it quietly for small gestures of compliance and cooperation. In return, the creature seemed to respond with recognition, almost like a silent nod. One evening, Rowland decided to test another limit. He led the hunter to the edge of the asteroid outpost, where the void stretched endlessly. He could see distant stars, drifting debris, and the faint glow of a nearby planet. The hunter stiffened at first, its instincts warning it against the unknown. Rowland crouched slowly, extending his hand, palm open, inviting rather than commanding. "We don't have to jump yet," he said softly. "But when the time comes, we will face it together." The creature watched him for long moments, its eyes reflecting the stars. Finally, it lowered itself slightly, acknowledging his calm authority. Rowland understood that this step was critical. The creature could leap vast distances in space, but its instincts were always focused on survival and attack. To become an ally, it had to choose to follow him, not because of orders, but because of trust. He began teaching it to respond to small cues, gestures, subtle shifts in his posture, even the tone of his voice. Over the next several days, he reinforced these lessons, rewarding compliance with safety, praise, and careful attention. Slowly, he saw results. The creature became more deliberate, less reactive, and increasingly willing to cooperate. As this trust grew, Rowland began preparing for something he had never imagined, leaving the outpost with the creature. He had repaired vessels before, but never thought he would travel into the galaxy riding a living being. Yet as he observed the hunter moving with intelligence, grace, and growing responsiveness, a plan began to form. He realized that the creature had abilities far beyond human engineering, abilities that could carry him to places no machine ever could reach. And if he could guide it, they could move as one, exploring areas humans had only dreamed of. Rowland spent hours mapping out their potential journey. He used the old star charts scattered across the outpost, marking regions of interest and noting hazards to avoid. The hunter watched him quietly as he traced paths and calculations, sometimes leaning close to sniff at the charts, its curiosity evident. Rowland felt a spark of excitement. He was not just a mechanic anymore. He was a pioneer, and this creature, once sent to kill him, was becoming his partner in discovery. One night, as they rested under the dim glow of distant stars, Rowland realized how far they had come. The hunter no longer regarded him with suspicion. Its breathing was steady, its posture relaxed, and its eyes held a glimmer of recognition that went beyond survival instinct. It understood that he was not an enemy, and perhaps it was beginning to understand that he could be an ally, a companion, and even a friend. Rowland spoke to it quietly about the galaxy beyond the asteroid belt, about places where stars clustered in colors unseen by most humans, and where gravity shifted in strange and beautiful ways. He described how planets could appear to float without atmosphere, how comets raced past like sparks across the sky, and how distant ships sometimes vanished into the black void. The creature listened intently, head tilted, eyes following his gestures, and body calm yet alert. He knew that trust could be fragile, and that one wrong move could undo everything. Yet he also understood that patience, consistency, and care had created something extraordinary. This was no longer a human surviving a hunter. It was a partnership, fragile but growing, built on understanding and respect. Rowland felt a quiet pride, not in himself, but in the fact that life could transform in ways no one anticipated. The creature had chosen to pause, to observe, to follow, and to learn. In doing so, it had transformed from a weapon into something more the next day. Rowland began teaching it more complex actions. He showed it how to manipulate certain controls in the outpost, how to respond to his hand gestures, and how to move carefully over unstable surfaces. The hunter adapted quickly, its intelligence evident in the way it analyzed each task before acting. Rowland was amazed by how fast it learned, how precise it became, and how closely it mirrored his intent. He realized that this bond, once unthinkable, was now tangible. As days passed, the creature became increasingly protective of him. It stayed near his side, watching over the outpost, and even began to anticipate his needs. When he reached for a tool, it would nudge it closer. When he paused for rest, it would settle nearby, keeping a watchful eye on the horizon. The hunter had begun to act not out of fear or training, but out of choice. And Rowland understood that this choice would define the journey ahead. One evening, Rowland stood on the edge of the outpost, looking at the distant stars, the hunter at his side. He realized that the bond they had built was more than survival. It was the foundation for an adventure neither of them could have imagined when the hunter first appeared. And as he felt the quiet strength of the creature beside him, he knew that whatever challenges awaited in the galaxy, they would face them together. The first step had been trust. The second, understanding. And now they were ready for the next step, leaving the outpost behind and venturing into the unknown, side by side. Rowland had been preparing for days. He had studied the stars, examined the outpost carefully, and observed the hunter big cat, learning its habits, its strengths, and its limits. He knew it was time to take the next step. Until now, the creature had stayed near the outpost, learning to trust him, learning to understand him. But now, he needed to see if their bond could survive beyond the asteroid belt. In the vastness of the galaxy, where nothing familiar would be there to guide them, he approached the hunter slowly, his hands open and his voice calm. "We're leaving today," he said softly. "Not far at first, just beyond the belt. I need you to trust me." The creature lifted its head and regarded him, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Its muscles twitched with anticipation, and for a moment Rowland felt a flicker of doubt. Could it really follow him, not out of instinct, but because it chose to? He had learned that patience was crucial, And now he would test that trust in the most extreme way. Rowland climbed onto a sturdy platform near the edge of the outpost. He gestured to the creature to come closer. At first, it hesitated, body low to the ground, muscles coiled as if ready to leap away. He spoke softly, reassuring it. "I'm not a threat," he said. "Hold still for me. We'll move together." Slowly, he reached out and touched the strong, warm fur along its back. It tensed slightly, but did not move away. He felt the power in its body, the raw energy that could crush a human with ease. And yet, it allowed him to climb carefully onto its back. The moment he settled, he felt the subtle shift of its muscles under him. The creature was aware, attentive, and responsive. He adjusted his position carefully, finding balance without pulling or restraining. He whispered instructions, not expecting it to understand words, but hoping his tone would convey calm authority. The hunter responded immediately, lifting its head, stretching its legs, and shifting weight to prepare for movement. Then it leapt. The force of the jump sent them upward, leaving the outpost behind. Dust and debris scattered as the hunter launched into the void, its muscles propelling them faster than any human could move. Rowland held on tightly, feeling the incredible speed, the rush of windless motion, and the sensation of weightless freedom. The stars stretched around them like ribbons, and the planets and asteroids of the belt fell behind, shrinking into the distance. Rowland's heart raced, but not with fear. He was exhilarated. This was more than any shuttle or spacecraft could offer. The creature moved with precision, twisting and adjusting mid-air with grace that seemed impossible. He could feel its strength, its awareness, its understanding that he trusted it completely. In response, it moved as if part of him, a single being with two minds working in harmony. Hours passed as they left the asteroid belt. The galaxy unfolded before them like a vast, endless canvas of light and shadow. Rowland pointed out distant star clusters, explaining in a quiet voice what he knew of them. "That one over there is young," he said, "bright and hot. It won't last long in cosmic terms, but it's powerful. That one there has planets, and maybe life we can't even imagine." The hunter did not understand words, but it seemed to sense the wonder in his tone. Its eyes followed his gestures, and its body adjusted smoothly to every movement of his hands and shift of his weight. They traveled through regions of space Rowland had only read about in old manuals and star charts. Nebulae stretched in colors he had never imagined, deep blues, fiery reds, and sparkling golds swirling in silent beauty. Comets raced past, leaving trails of light behind them, and distant ships appeared as tiny specks of silver in the void. The hunter navigated effortlessly, moving around obstacles, banking sharply when debris drifted in their path, and maintaining a steady speed that never faltered. Rowland marveled at the creature's intelligence. It was one thing to follow instructions, but it was another to anticipate dangers, to act without hesitation, and to adapt instantly to the unpredictable movements of space debris. He realized he had never seen anything like it in all his years of working with machines or vehicles. The hunter was alive, thinking, choosing, and responding in ways no engineered system ever could. He felt a mix of awe and gratitude. Without it, he could never have survived this journey. As they passed through a particularly dense field of drifting rocks, Rowland felt the hunter slow slightly, muscles coiling for precise jumps. He leaned forward, guiding it with gentle pressure on its shoulders, whispering encouragement. The creature responded instantly, shifting its trajectory to avoid collisions, twisting mid-air, and using its limbs to maneuver around the obstacles with breathtaking precision. They moved like a single entity, human and creature in perfect synchronization. For the first time, Rowland allowed himself to imagine the possibilities. With this bond, he could reach places humans had never reached. The galaxy, once intimidating and cold, now felt full of potential. The hunter's speed and adaptability, combined with his own knowledge, could take them to distant planets, uncharted regions, and even beyond areas where humans had dared to travel. He began thinking of missions, explorations, and discoveries he had never considered when confined to his outpost. During a moment of calm flight, Rowland noticed that the hunter was not just responding. It was observing him. Its eyes flicked to his face, then to his hands, then back to the stars. It seemed aware of his excitement, his focus, and his wonder. He realized that it understood more than instinct. It could sense emotion, intention, and trust. In that awareness, a connection formed that was more profound than he could have imagined when he first treated its injury at the outpost. As night fell across distant stars, Rowland spoke softly again, describing the vastness of space and the beauty of the galaxies they were passing. "Look at this," he said, pointing toward a bright cluster of stars. "No human has ever been this close. Some will never know it exists." The hunter slowed, turning its head to follow his gaze. He felt a sense of companionship that went beyond survival. It was mutual respect, trust, and understanding. They continued traveling for what felt like hours, though in space, time was a strange thing. Rowland felt the steady rhythm of the hunter beneath him, the heartbeat of muscles trained for survival, and he realized how extraordinary this journey was. This creature, sent to kill him, had become the vehicle of his adventure. It was no longer a weapon. It was an ally, a protector, and a companion capable of carrying him beyond the limits of human technology. Eventually, they approached the edge of a distant star system, a region of uncharted planets and asteroid fields. Rowland adjusted his position, speaking quietly to the hunter, guiding it toward a small, habitable world that appeared as a green and blue sphere in the distance. The creature responded instantly, banking sharply, accelerating, and maneuvering with skill that left Rowland awestruck. He realized then that he had not just survived. The hunter had trusted him enough to carry him safely through unknown territory, and he had to honor that trust by guiding them carefully as they descended toward the planet's atmosphere. Rowland marveled at the colors and textures below. Mountains, forests, rivers, and oceans stretched in patterns both familiar and alien. The hunter's powerful limbs adjusted instinctively, landing them gently on a plateau overlooking a shimmering lake. Rowland slid off its back carefully, still holding on to the trust and respect they had built. The hunter settled nearby, relaxed yet alert, aware of his every movement, but content in knowing that they had reached this new world safely together. Rowland smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. This was only the beginning. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, full of unknowns, dangers, and wonders. Yet he had found an ally in the hunter, a companion who had chosen to follow him, not because it had to, but because it trusted him. And he knew that with patience, understanding, and courage, they could face anything together. For the first time, he felt the true scale of the universe and the depth of the bond he had formed. He realized that survival, trust, and partnership could achieve more than fear, force, or training ever could. And as he stood on the edge of the plateau, looking out at the new world before them, he understood one thing clearly. Together, he and the hunter could go anywhere, explore anything, and face any challenge the galaxy presented. The adventure had only just begun, but already Rowland knew he would never be alone again. Rowland stood on the plateau, the hunter big cat beside him, its body relaxed but ready. Below them stretched the new world they had discovered, its rivers sparkling like silver, forests swaying in strange winds, and mountains rising like giants from the landscape. He breathed deeply, feeling the fresh air and marveling at the fact that he had arrived here riding a creature sent to kill him. The journey had been dangerous, uncertain, and full of moments where either could have failed. Yet now They were here together. He knew, however, that this calm could not last forever. Far across the galaxy, the alien matriarch who had sent the hunter still held expectations. She had created a weapon, trained it to obey, and intended for it to eliminate him. But the hunter had changed. It had learned choice, trust, and caution. Rallin understood that eventually the matriarch would discover this deviation and confront them. He could not hide forever. He looked at the hunter, and for the first time, he spoke words with clarity and intention. "We're going to face her," he said softly, "but we'll do it together. Not as hunter and prey, but as partners. You trust me, and I trust you. That's more than she will ever understand." The creature's head tilted slightly, as if it understood. Its ears twitched, and its glowing eyes fixed on him with unwavering attention. Rallin felt a thrill of confidence. They had grown beyond the simple roles assigned to them. Together, they were something new. He began preparing for the inevitable encounter. The hunter moved beside him, watching every tool, every device, and every precaution he set in place. Rallin worked quietly, crafting small signals and gestures they could use in unison. He reviewed every maneuver, predicting possible scenarios in which the matriarch might attempt to intimidate, threaten, or attack. He trusted the hunter to act not out of instinct alone, but because it had learned to anticipate and cooperate. And he would act not as a fugitive, but as someone who had changed the rules of the game. The day of confrontation arrived. A sleek, massive ship, dark and intimidating, appeared in the sky above the plateau. Its hull reflected the light of the distant sun, and the air seemed to vibrate with its arrival. The alien matriarch descended gracefully, her presence commanding and cold. She had expected a weak, frightened human and a loyal weapon at her disposal. Instead, she found a human standing confidently atop the plateau, the hunter by his side, muscles coiled but calm, eyes glowing with silent intelligence. The matriarch's gaze shifted from Rallin to the hunter and back again. "You have altered my plans," she said, her voice echoing with authority. "The hunter was to eliminate you. Yet here you stand, alive and unscathed. How is this possible?" Rallin did not flinch. He stepped forward slightly, hands visible, voice steady. "It's simple," he said. "You taught the hunter to obey orders. I taught it to think, to choose, and to trust. Your weapon is no longer a weapon. It is a partner. And it chose me." The hunter growled softly, low in its throat, but not aggressively. It stepped forward, muscles tensing as if to support Rallin, ready to act at a moment's notice. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. She had not anticipated choice, not in a creature she had trained for years. Her command over it was no longer absolute. The human before her had created something she could not control, something unpredictable, something powerful in a way she had never considered. "You defied me," she said, her tone sharp, dangerous, but curious. "And yet you survived. Explain this." Rallin looked her directly in the eyes. "I did not survive because of force or weapons," he said calmly. "I survived because I understood. I treated the hunter not as a tool, but as life. I showed patience, care, and respect. That is what it responded to. You cannot control what you do not understand." For a moment, silence fell over the plateau. The hunter remained at Rallin's side, alert but composed, its breathing steady. The matriarch studied both of them, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she raised her hand. "You have changed the rules of obedience," she said quietly, almost thoughtfully. "Your actions are dangerous, human. You have created independence where there should be only control." "Why?" Rallin stepped closer, careful but confident. "Because force and fear are not the only ways to achieve loyalty," he said. "Understanding, patience, and respect can accomplish far more. The hunter chose to follow me, not because it had to, but because it wanted to. That choice is stronger than any command you could give." The matriarch considered his words, her eyes never leaving the hunter. It was clear she recognized the truth her weapon, her perfect hunter, had evolved beyond her influence. The hunter let out a soft rumble, almost like a sigh, and moved closer to Rowan, brushing against him gently. He patted its fur, acknowledging the bond they shared. The matriarch's eyes narrowed, but there was no malice in her gaze now. Instead, there was recognition. She had underestimated the power of choice, the strength that came from respect rather than domination. "You have changed more than the hunter," she said finally. "You have changed the balance. Perhaps you are stronger than I anticipated." Rowan nodded slowly. "Not stronger, different. I survived because I treated life with respect. That is something you have never tried." The matriarch remained silent, considering this, her posture calm but alert. Then, surprisingly, she lowered her stance slightly, an acknowledgement of the shift in power. "You and your companion have proven yourselves," she said. "The galaxy is dangerous. Perhaps there is value in independence, even in those I create for obedience." Rowan felt a sense of relief. She had not conceded completely, but she had recognized the truth: they had survived, and they had done so on their terms. That the matriarch extended a hand toward the hunter. "You have evolved beyond my command," she said softly. "And yet I see loyalty in your eyes. Choose wisely." The hunter paused, its glowing eyes flicking to Rowan, then back to the matriarch. It moved slightly toward him, brushing against his side, a silent declaration of allegiance. The matriarch's gaze followed, and she did not intervene. Rowan realized the significance. They had survived not through violence, not through trickery, but through connection, patience, and mutual understanding. The hunter's choice had changed the outcome entirely. He looked up at the matriarch. "We do not fight because of fear. We protect because of trust. That is why we are stronger together." For the first time, the matriarch's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. She had learned that control was not always power, and obedience was not always loyalty. Sometimes strength came from choice, from respect, and from partnership. She stepped back, raising her hand slightly in acknowledgement. "Very well," she said. "You may continue. But remember, human, the galaxy will test your bond, as it tests all who survive." Rowan nodded, understanding. "We are ready for any challenge," he said. The hunter growled softly in agreement, brushing its head against him. Together, they had faced the impossible, transformed a weapon into an ally, and survived beyond what anyone expected. The galaxy lay open before them, full of unknown worlds, dangers, and discoveries. And they were ready to face it together. As the matriarch departed, her ship disappearing into the sky, Rowan and the hunter stood on the plateau, watching the sun reflect off distant lakes and mountains. The bond they had formed was now unbreakable, forged through trust, patience, and shared survival. Rowan realized that this was more than an adventure. It was beginning a chance to explore, to discover, and to live in a galaxy full of possibilities that no one had yet imagined. He turned to the hunter, placing a hand gently on its back. "We made it," he said softly. "And now there's nowhere we can't go together." The creature responded with a low, content rumble, moving closer and nuzzling him gently. For Rowan, the moment was perfect. They had survived. They had triumphed without unnecessary violence. And they had formed a bond that could carry them beyond the stars. Together, human and hunter, they would journey into the galaxy, discovering worlds, overcoming challenges, and proving that even in the coldest, most dangerous reaches of space, connection, trust, and respect were more powerful than fear or force. And so, with the galaxy stretching endlessly before them, Rowan climbed once again onto the hunter's back. The creature leapt smoothly into the void, carrying them into the unknown, where adventure awaited and the possibilities were infinite. This was no longer survival. This was freedom, partnership, and the beginning of a legend that neither the matriarch nor any other would forget.